Hi guys, welcome to Covfefe with Carter and Keri on Unsafe Space. Today is May 9th, and if you guys aren't already following us, you can follow us on Unsafe Space at YouTube and subscribe there. We just cracked 600. If we could get to 601 today, that would be amazing. What do you think, Carter?
I think we're past 601.
Oh,
Yeah, we have bigger goals than that. I think our goal, I think we were trying to get to like 650 by Monday. I don't know if that's going to happen, but we're at 601 right now, according to what I'm looking at in front of me. Yeah.
Cool.
I don't know that we'll get to 650 by Monday, but we're going to try. And you can help us. So, Keri.
Yep.
What do you want to talk about this Thursday?
I was thinking about it ahead of time. I hope that sometimes I feel like we talk about bad news and then we leave here in a bad, I don't know, leave a bad taste in people's mouth maybe. Do you think so? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
there's so much bad news. What what do you have good news, or are you just saying that to make us feel
No,
worse?
I just was saying, so we did our Covfefe yesterday, but at that time I hadn't yet read about the school shooting that had happened the day before in Colorado.
Yeah, I hadn't either. Yeah.
So I started reading about that yesterday, and I saw some people discussing online. It's the same conversations that happen every time. And my thoughts on it are, there are definitely some things that I think are common sense gun regulations that we could do that you and I probably disagree on.
Sure.
I know we disagree on reporting mental health records, states having to report the mental health records to NICS. But there's probably a couple more that we might disagree on. However, I do not agree at all with a gun ban. I'll never agree with any type of, like, any gun ban for any semi-auto. And I think people focus there to the exclusion of the real problem. Hold on one second. Okay. I forgot I have to hold this little dog or he's going to whine the whole time. The diaper dog. Yeah, so just let me hold him.
Okay, so you were saying we focus on the exclusion of other things.
Yeah, because let's say you ban all guns. That doesn't address why these kids are shooting up their schools, right? Like, that's not addressing this phenomenon. And it does nothing to solve the underlying problems. And I think it's more of like a cosmetic thing about making yourself feel good. Like you look at something that you don't know how to fix, and then you say, well, let me take the guns out of it and I've done something. No, you haven't done anything. The harder thing is to figure out why kids are doing this. And I think that's a much harder question. And I think it has to do with changes in society. I think it has to do with like a nihilism that's being promoted, and I mean, a lot of things I think it involves. But I think focusing on the guns is just it's a way to avoid looking at the real issue, if that makes sense.
No, of course. It's at some point I want to do a show about weaponized empathy, but yeah, it's a way to kind of demonstrate that you feel. Because the implication is, like, if you don't want to just so there's like the immediate visceral reaction that like a child would have to something, like, oh, I don't want to get a shot, therefore no shot, right? Like, or whatever it is, like I'm not talking about gunshot, I'm talking about
Right. The
There's that
doctor
reaction of like, I don't like this pain, therefore that thing is bad, and we should ban it. And that's just the adult version of it. Like, I don't like people getting shot, and therefore we should ban guns, without any thought about like what that means, whether it's practical, whether it's actually right, what the real reason for it behind any of it is. It just like you're saying, just makes them feel better to say ban guns. And just as a practical note, banning guns, first of all, there aren't more guns now than there were in the past. Like in high schools used to have rifle clubs and stuff. So if you're not at least asking the question, what changed, you're being disingenuous. Like something changed. I mean, yes, there are more guns because more things get manufactured, but there's more people. And like per capita, like we've had about this many guns for a long, long time. Why suddenly is this happening? I don't want to say suddenly, but why has this been on the rise? And that's a real difficult question, but it's the right question to be asking, not just looking at the weapon they're using. And, if the war on guns goes as well as the war on drugs, you're not really going to get rid of them anyway, especially with 3D printed guns. Now, by the way, I just have to show this. So this is related to this. This is a moment of silence for all freedom-loving people.
What is this?
Police raided a home in LA and found more than 1,000 firearms. So all these precious guns are gone. They're out of our hands. They'll probably be destroyed or stolen by ATF members to go play with.
I don't know what this is though.
Your weapons. These are the
I don't know what this is though. Why did they raid this home? And
I think it was legal. I mean, I imagine it wasn't clear, but it looked like there was like illegal gun running that was happening, and they arrested the guy. Why there's such a thing as illegal gun running is a separate issue. But yeah, just it's still a moment of silence for people who love guns. It's very sad to see all those guns go to the ATF, who is the enemy. But yeah, it's not about guns. It's about the psychology of kids. Speaking of psychology of kids, Keri, maybe this great segue. Oh wait, no, we can't segue yet because there's one more thing to be said about the shooter, I think.
No, I have more things to say.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No. So I was looking this up. I think it's really sad because nobody seems to care about what the real underlying problem is. And, there are kids who are having to act as heroes now. There's a kid who died.
Yep.
Of course, who had to act as to try and fight this person off. And talking about the underlying problems, it's like there's this guy I was looking up because I was trying to remember who it was. There's this guy, I read this thing in I think it was the New Yorker a while back, a year or two ago maybe. I'm not sure how old it is, but it's Malcom Gladwell. Mm-hmm. He talks about riot theory, which, have I talked to you about this before?
No, you have not.
So riot theory is this idea that everyone has a threshold at which they're willing to join a riot. So there are the people.
You have talked about this.
Right.
But keep going. I think this is good. I don't know that you've talked about it on air.
Oh, yeah, I don't think I have. No. So the idea is that riot theory is that everyone has a different threshold for this kind of group violence. So some people are threshold 0, and there's just a very few of those people. And those people are the first person to throw the rock, right, in a riot. Then there are more people who are threshold 1. Once they see some people throwing rocks, then they're willing to pick up a rock and throw it, right? Then there are people who are like threshold 2 and 3 and what have you, all the way to like people who are the most reluctant to engage in that type of violence. They probably have some type of limit at which they would get involved as well, right? Some type of threshold at which. So he has been talking about riot theory, if I'm recalling this correctly, as it relates to, and people can look this up. I didn't find the article as I was just looking, but he's been talking about riot theory as it might possibly relate to school shootings, and kind of looking at shootings in the same way, where you have maybe a certain number of people in the population, disturbed people who are willing to commit a mass shooting and suicide, who have a threshold of 0. Very few of those people. But if one does it, and Columbine was the first one that got a lot of attention, media attention, if one does it, then there's people who are a threshold of 1 who are going to it's going to plant something in their head. And it's going to make them probably more likely to do something that they never would have considered doing before. Mm-hmm. And then if you get enough of those threshold 1 people doing it, it becomes common enough, then you've got some threshold 2 people who might join. And so I thought that was just a really interesting way of thinking about it, as spreading like a virus of some kind almost. And And the media is, I know you and I have talked about this off air, but the media is complicit in this. And I don't know what the answer is, because obviously you don't want to say, well, journalists can't report on mass shootings, but the media attention is you almost can't separate the two, like how it's related. And there's got to be some type of compromise. I mean, I sometimes they go on and on about these things. They stay on this topic for too long, and it becomes a way that a kid who feels bullied or ostracized or feels resentful or angry can get revenge. That's what the kids in this situation did. They would, so far at least, I saw the only motive they said is that these kids wanted, it's two kids, that they wanted revenge. They don't fit the mold, by the way, of the shooter that the left likes to talk about. So we probably won't see as much media attention on them. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but one of them, he's like a drama student. He has like pink hair and has posted some anti-Trump stuff. Not that that's related at all. It just tells you he's not they can't just immediately go to right-wing white guy. Right. And then the other person whose name they haven't released is because he's 18 and the other person's 17, a minor, is a trans boy. So a biological girl who is in the middle of transitioning to a boy, which I think this might be our first trans mass shooter. But yeah, they can't go straight to, they always go straight to toxic white, male shooter. They go straight there immediately. But if it's someone like this, they don't know what to say. So they're not going to talk about toxic transgenderism or, not going to talk about.
I don't know this is the thing, but yeah.
Yeah. But they will. I think the point you were going to.
Go ahead.
I think what you're bringing up was that, yeah, the trans, I did see that. Here's what the SJWs are concerned with on Twitter, that this mass shooter is being misgendered in the press. Like, that's their concern.
Right.
Okay. But.
Yeah, because that's the important thing, is misgendering your mass shooter. So back to the Malcolm Gladwell thing. So there is here. So I found this article. Let me put it up. So this, I think, summarizes partly what you're saying. Malcolm Gladwell says the school shooting epidemic is like a slow-moving riot.
Yeah, that's it.
What if the way to explain the school shooting epidemic is to think of it as a slow-motion, ever-evolving riot in which each new participant's actions make sense in reaction to and in combination with those who came before? I think that's an interesting theory. I would argue that in a riot, you don't have time to stop and be rational and consider your behavior. And so I'm not sure that the slow moving riot dynamics would be the same as a regular riot. Like if you imagine a regular riot slowed down, like someone throws a rock and I see them throw a rock, but then the riot breaks up and we reconvene in a month. Do I still want to throw a rock? Like, I don't know. So I'm not sure. I do think that it's easy to say that culture has something to do with this stuff, because that's a very broad statement. Mm-hmm. But I think the answer does lie in culture. And, you were talking about the school shootings being publicized, or mass shootings being publicized generally, because I'm an old guy, I listen to older music, and I was listening to the Dirty Laundry song by Don Henley. You know that song? People love it when you lose, they love dirty laundry. You know that song?
Oh, yeah, I know that song. Okay.
So I was listening to it, and my daughter's at the age where, she's listened to a lot of music with me as she's grown up, but she's starting to really apply her concepts and understanding of the world to the meaning behind songs. And so she's starting to ask, like, well, what do they mean by this? And what are they saying? And what are they talking about? And why are they talking about that? And, thank God I don't have her listen to modern music. They're talking about doing drugs and, having orgies. But not that old music didn't have some of that too. Anyway, we got into a discussion about this because in this song, he's talking about the news media loving conflict, like loving anything they can sensationalize, right? And I think he talks about an anchor like reporting a plane crash with a gleam in her eye and that kind of thing, because people love it when you die. Like they love the bodies and they love that stuff. And the reason that the news loves it is because we love it. It gets them ratings. And so when we're in a society that responds by obsessing over mass shootings, then the media, yes, they play a role in pushing it, but they're pushing it because you click. They're pushing it because you care. They're pushing it because they sell more ads and get more airtime, or more eyeballs, because we are obsessed with school shootings and mass shootings generally. And why is that? I don't know. That's another deep question. But like, my point is, there's an onion that the layers need to be peeled back here, and there is clearly a lot of built up. I would say there's a lot of pent up angst in society. No matter what side you're on, people feel like something's going wrong in society and feel increasingly isolated, and there is this kind of non-thinking sensationalism by the news. Like even when they pretend to do in-depth reporting on something, it's not in depth. I mean, it's like, they took the outer skin of the onion off, right? They didn't do their version of in-depth is very surface level. People don't have real discussions. Discussions often, I mean, and this is kind of related to what you're saying about gun bans. Discussions end at a very brain dead emotional level. Do you like shootings? No. Then you should ban guns. And if you don't want to ban guns, you're an evil, mean person who likes shootings. That's the end of my thought process. No one's willing to like sit down and really dive into it. You and I disagree with each other about some of the gun stuff, but I don't think that you're an evil person because you have a disagreement with me about it. And it doesn't mean that I'm not willing to have a deep conversation. And we don't have to do it right now, but we could have a deep conversation about why it is that we think those things and really dig into that and try and solve the problem. But that's not what happens at all in society right now. And so I guess my point is just the problem is cultural, and like I don't think you can separate one thing from another. You can't separate culture from the behavior of people in that culture. You can't say like, oh, why are they doing this? I want some easy answer, which is AR-15s or video games or whatever, or bullying or Trump. Those aren't the reasons, right? Culture is much more complex. People's lives are more complex than that.
So I have a question for you. Let me see if I can articulate this the right way. So you have politicians who make this worse by running on anti-gun platform or whatever, right? Which is not going to fix the real problem. And I believe they are using this issue in a way that I just to get votes. Do you know what I mean?
Right, but they would only, again, with the politicians, I hate them, but they would only use it if it worked.
Right, it works. You're right. So the politicians are not the ones who, and it's not their job as the government anyway, to address what is wrong, what's happening in this country. Like what is the underlying illness or sickness, right? I think we tend to look towards politicians for answers for everything, and some things I'm just starting to realize some of those things are not within their sphere of responsibility anyway. We don't need the government to figure this out for us.
Well, be careful. You're starting to red pill yourself.
Really, I don't know what that means, but
maybe black pill. I don't know. Yeah,
so many different red pills. I don't know which is but so who are the leaders who we should be looking to address this underlying illness? Because I have the beginnings of an idea, but my idea is rooted in being a new Christian about who those people are. So what would you say as an atheist? Like, who are the people we should be looking towards?
Well, I don't think you're actually that far off with your bringing up Christianity. I think the problem is philosophical. And I mean, this gets boring. So like, I don't know, people don't want to hear this on a Thursday morning, but like,
this isn't boring. This is the most interesting conversation we've had.
It gets boring to other people. I'm fascinated by it. The problem really is philosophical. We never really fully embraced the values and ideology, the ideas, not ideology, the ideas of the Enlightenment. We never really fully embraced them, and we gave away the torch of philosophical thought to, and I'm talking like literally in universities and philosophers in universities. We handed the torch to people who were not bought in to the Enlightenment, whether they were atheists or not. Hegel wasn't an atheist, but certainly did a lot of horrible things philosophically. And the problem is, we were busy building roads and railroads and inventing stuff and building an economy. And I say we, I just mean everyone who wasn't a philosopher. And so it was pretty easy to ignore the quirky philosophy department dudes and like, yeah, whatever. They're reading some guy named Marx. Who the hell cares? Whatever. I don't know, right? I mean, no one cared. And it's because no one cared about philosophy. And this is why I think Christianity is related, because obviously religion and philosophy are closely related. Because no one cared about those things, it festered, and it didn't stay in the philosophy department, right? It indoctrinated philosophy students who went out in the world and spread mostly through the humanities, because very few philosophy students end up being engineers, right? It spread, and they became teachers, and then they went into other academic departments, and things started to get influenced. And only now, when it's starting to infect things that are more obvious to lay people, like when they're jumping out saying like, there's not true that there's two biological sexes, suddenly we're like, oh my God, science is under attack. Science has been under attack this entire time, but we just don't view those other things as having scientific basis. We don't view anything else as needing to conform to rational thought, but all of it needs to conform to logic and reason, all of it. And what happened was, we were like, yeah, the humanities can be irrational and crazy and stupid, and that's fine. Just don't bleed into the sciences. That's not how it works. Mm-hmm. If you let them, because they create the culture. So if they create a culture of irrational, emotion-based beings who look to the state to solve every one of their problems and shoot up schools when they're angry or whatever it is, if you create a culture of that, you're not going to have science for long. It's going to bleed into science. Someone's going to say, I don't identify as male or female, therefore there are more than two sexes biologically. Science is wrong. Someone else is going to say, reason is a tool of oppression by white people. People are they're going to start having quote debates where they freestyle rap about emotions, and that's the debate. So I mean, all that stuff is going to happen. And none of this is surprising if you saw it earlier and you know where it's coming from. But I think if we react to it like the gun grabbers react to school violence, which is like at a very surface level, the gun is bad, grab it. If we react to it by saying, oh, well, just this latest manifestation of social justice is bad, but everything before that things were fine then before. That's not true. They weren't fine then before. They were laying the groundwork for all of this. And the only way to solve this, ultimately, I think, is how you raise your children. We need to relay the groundwork. It will take generations, but we need to relay the groundwork of kids who are raised to be rational and understand and appreciate Enlightenment values and fight for them as they move forward in their lives and grow up. And that's going to take several generations. It took several generations to get here. There's no magic button to fix it, which is why parenting is very important to me. I don't talk about it on the show very much, but if I had more time and resources, energy, I'd have an entire show about parenting, because I think it's a important subject. So.
Well, I think I definitely agree with you on what one of the solutions is, which is to raise healthy, well-adjusted kids. Absolutely. I guess my question is more of like, where are the thought leaders? So as a new Christian, I would say, where are the ones in the church, right? Because, I'm not that familiar with, I'm just now learning about this whole split where people are criticizing big evangelism versus, I don't know. I'm still learning stuff, but I think this is why Jordan Peterson became popular and why someone like Sam Harris became popular. So they're not in the church, but for the secular world, that's like, they are speaking the same values.
Right. Right.
A lot of these guys and they're speaking these values, even though it's not popular to speak those values now. Personal responsibility. Who's preaching about personal responsibility? You know?
Right.
I don't know. I guess I'm answering my own question. I was just wondering if you think, because I started, I was like, I don't know who the thought leaders are, but then as you're answering, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, it's probably these guys who are pushing who are encouraging the same kind of values that you find within Christianity, but maybe not necessarily doing it within that religion.
Yeah. I mean, Christianity or not, I mean, obviously I'm an atheist, so I'm in the not Christianity camp. But I think it is important to separate and I know a lot of Christians don't like this message, but Christianity is not the answer. It's not the whole answer, even if it's part of the answer, which I don't think it necessarily is. I think it's credited with some things that it deserves as being good and helping move us to this direction. I don't think it's necessary to move forward at all. But even if it were, it's certainly not the entire answer. And the reason it's not the entire answer is you can look out at the world and you can see that, like, well, there's been a hell of a lot of Christians who were not on board with Enlightenment values. Well, and like that's not, it's just like that's not because the answer either. Like there's a hell of a lot of communist atheists. Like absolutely. Neither one of those is a complete answer by itself.
I would separate Christianity from God. I don't think Christianity is the answer, but I do think God is the answer. And,
sure.
But we don't have to go there.
No, I get that. I get that. But my point is like, you're saying, well, where are the Christian leaders? And my point is, it transcends Christianity. I think Christianity had a lot to contribute, and I don't want to take that away from Christianity, and it had a lot to contribute to the building of the West. So certainly that's important, but it's not just Christianity. And so I think a lot of Christian leaders, this is the fallacy of thinking like, oh, they agree with me about Christianity, therefore they're good people. Like, no, I think most of the Christian leaders have probably been have fallen to convergence, or they were never really on board or didn't really understand. And that's Christians, their expertise is not, a lot of Christian leaders, their expertise is not in philosophic thinking and morality and ethics and, actually answering philosophic questions. That's not their domain. Their domain is the Bible, and that's fine. But that's not the same thing.
You're absolutely right about, like, this illness is, Christianity's not immune to it. This illness that we're talking about, that's the society's illness, is moving, as we've said before, we want to do an episode about it, but right. It's moving into the churches. Interesting. I think this is, I could talk about this forever, but I know we have to wrap up because we're going.
I can talk about it forever too, but
well, yeah.
I'm pretty sure we'll bore everyone. I'm not sure. Sure. Maybe.
Do you guys think this is boring? Let's do a poll. Do you think this is boring?
Can people tell us? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Should instead we talk about, because the alternative to this discussion, I'll find the image for you just to leave you with this lovely image. The alternative was to talk about Desmond, the 11-year-old trans stripper that is being worshipped by Converse now, who is featuring.
Let's save that for tomorrow. Yeah.
We could end on rainbows and trans kids who strip for their, I don't want to say a living. I'm sure their parents are behind it, just like the horrible pageant kids. But so what do you want? You want more fluff like that, or do you want we can?
That's not fluff though. That's related. That's all a part of the same conversation. It is all a part of the same conversation. It's just that it's this particular part of the conversation we're having today is, about malaise and cultural nihilism. But see, that's a part of that.
You're right.
I don't think I think what you should have said, the alternative is to talk about, one of my friends on some, he wrote last night, he was like, I think you're becoming too obsessed with this stuff. I'm concerned about you. So the alternative is to talk about what he talks about all the time, which is films. He's a big film buff.
Let's talk about the Avengers Endgame.
And by the way, I like this guy. He's great. But yeah, you talk about what you want to talk about, sir, which might be films. I don't necessarily want to talk about movies all the time.
Right.
This is much more important to me. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah, no, it's Western civilization's burning around you, but you know.
Let's talk about the Avengers.
The use of metaphor film that you like. That's great.
Anyway.
All right. Well, on that note, I think we should wrap up, Keri. We'll be back later today for Deprogrammed at 11 Pacific, 1 o'clock Texas time.
Texas time. Talk to you guys later.
Bye. Oh, wait, subscribe. I'm supposed to say subscribe.
Subscribe
on YouTube and tell all of your friends to subscribe. And if I could figure out a way to guilt you emotionally into subscribing, I would totally do that right now.